Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Enough to Keep Going podcast. This is episode number 441 for Sunday, July 12th, 2026. I am your host, TomMaster99. Yes, I'm finally back. Seems like forever since I've been on the show. I think it's been just a few weeks, though, actually. Um, but I am back and I'm here hosting, but I also have at least one co host for tonight. Unfortunately, DBQ Hams cannot make it tonight. Got some family stuff going on. But we have one Mr. Game Logic. Game, how's it going?
Good, man. Very good. It's been good gaming, despite the travesty that has been the news cycle for the last few weeks. But there's plenty of content out there, plenty of stuff in the backlogs. So hopefully people are finding a way to remain cheerful despite all the negativity that's going on.
Yes, very much doom and gloom these last couple episodes when I've gone back and listened to them. So I haven't been on. But hopefully we'll kind of turn around here and maybe, I guess the news cycle is still a little bit wishy-washy, but we'll see what happens here when we get to our segment 2 main news headlines. First up, we have segment 1 with our main GX stories. And surprisingly, these last 3 weeks, I haven't really played anything new. One game that I'll talk about later, I guess, kind of newish, but I'll talk about that during our Round Robin in segment 3. But you, Mr. Game Logic, have been going back to Doom, the Dark Ages, and I believe this is the new DLC, Revelations.
It is. So yeah, surprising myself because I've definitely been kind of most happy, most pleased with myself in digging through the backlog the last few weeks. Just haven't really just kind of got off the zeitgeist train and haven't really been super interested to get into anything like super new. But when I saw the DLC drop, I hesitated for a bit. There was some discussion of, people jumping on board Assassin's Creed Black Flag Resynced, and that was kind of on my mind. And then I was going to just kind of bypass both. And then there was EA College Football 27 this week, which I'm actually like really super interested in getting on PC because one of the things that, I have been playing that I didn't put it in the rundown tonight was I picked up NBA 2K26 on PC because it was on sale on Steam for like $9. And as good as it looks on the PlayStation 5 Pro, it looks just flat out amazing on PC, where I'm playing it on a 4K 32-inch OLED monitor. It's just, it's just peak. But I bypassed the full new stuff, in the remaster. And but I did decide I was going to go ahead and pick up the DLC because I think the DLC is like $20, and it's supposedly 10 to 12 hours of gameplay. So it hasn't been a thing that I've been super interested in, like sitting down and doing like one of my normal kind of 2-hour sessions with. So I've been where I've been playing it on PC. I've been playing it for like an hour and then flipping over and playing Forza Horizon 6. So it's a great setup. It is a PC with an RTX 4070 Super, and it's an ultra widescreen OLED monitor. So it just looks gorgeous. The game itself, it's super interesting because I didn't track it. I didn't really read up on it. I haven't really kept up. And it wasn't like something that I was like anticipating, but I did complete my playthrough of Doom the Dark Ages last December over the holidays, and so I'm a super, super rare DLC person. I almost never play DLC. Even though sometimes I'll have it just because like the Game of the Year package that I picked up or the remaster or whatever has the DLC in it, almost never play it. But I did, like I said, complete my run of Doom the Dark Ages, so I said, I'll go ahead and I really enjoyed that. I'll go ahead and pick this up. And so the story picks up at the end of Doom the Dark Ages, and you are, I won't go into a ton of detail to not spoil anything for anyone, but you are basically recruited to go to fight the demons, right, again with a slightly different mission purpose, but also there's things going on with like the humans on your side and the need to find like religious belief again after the end of Doom the Dark Ages. So you proceed to to go to hell, and take on the hell lords, right, or the council of hell or whatever. Um, what is most and so the setup as you go into this is you lose the shield, and so obviously one of your big core, weapon combat tools and components. Hey, what's up? Just Henry, thanks so much for checking into the chat. Yeah, you proceed to go to hell, right? um, uh, but you lose the shield, and so it's kind of not a like incredibly atypical setup for a first person shooter. Remember, like way back in the day, a common first person shooter trope was for like 50% of the way through the game for you to be stripped of all of your weapons, right? And then have to earn them back again. Used to be like, I hated that design aspect. But in this one, you lose your shield. You don't lose all of your other weapons. You just lose the shield. But shortly after waking back up, you are granted access to a new weapon, which is the chain spear. And you would have thought that Doom is Doom, right? And so you would have thought that and I think you lose your, like, the thing that was the equivalent of the BFG. I think they take that away from you. So you kind of would think that Doom is Doom, and there's not like a ton of variance to the formula, right? Just because you mix up weapons. But the introduction of the chain spear very radically changes the dynamic of combat, the symmetry of combat, the geometry of the combat in the game. Surprisingly so, in a way that is super, super, super engaging. I will also say it is definitely clear from a design aspect that they went back to Doom Eternal. And I think I believe what they heard is that there's a certain part of the fandom that says Doom Eternal is the better game and is the more challenging game. It is the more interesting game from a combat perspective. So I believe very pointedly that they went back to Doom Eternal, looked for key elements, and brought those into the game. I think they deliberately and consciously decided not to just make the DLC Doom Eternal. But I feel like they went back and they picked like the best parts. And so there is platforming in this game, more so than there was in the original Doom: The Dark Ages. But it is not the super aggravating, super frustrating, like pulling your hair out type of platforming that was in Doom Eternal, right? At least so far. And I'm a couple hours, I'm 2 or 3 hours into a 10-hour DLC package, right? At least right now, I have not been exposed to you having to jump around blind corners, completely unaware of where like the safe footfall is going to be, double jump through the air, right? Like it hasn't gotten that crazy yet. But the other super interesting thing is that the chain spear, not only does it introduce it introduces another variant of kind of ranged melee, but what you will realize after an hour or so in the game and using the chain spear is that it actually it functions as a grapple as well. I mean, you're aware that it functions as a grapple, but you don't consciously latch onto things. So there's a lot more traversal in Revelation. And so the chain spear also, because it is it's not like, I forget what game I guess Diablo. Diablo 4 has a power that the barbarian has where he extends like 3 chains and grabs an enemy and pulls them in close to melee them. This is kind of the opposite. The chain ejects out of the chain spear, the blade goes into a demon, and then that pulls you in close. And so you can use that for combat, but you can also use it, but you will also be forced to use it to traverse. And so there are grapple points around the levels. As you're pulled towards that grapple point, once you latch onto it, you can either move laterally around it, and so you can kind of whip around to gain momentum. And so it's kind of like a whiplash kind of thing. Or you can go over it, right, to gain height and distance on your jump. Then then there are new, I forget what they were called in the original Doom the Dark Ages, but there are upgrade points, right, scattered throughout the levels, and there are relics that you pick up, and in the vicinity of these, heirloom upgrade points, there are pieces of the relics. They're always in the vicinity of it. Sometimes it's two, sometimes it's three. There are multiple parts, and when you assemble all those, then you can go back to the upgrade point and upgrade other powers. Um, there are powers to upgrade the chain spear. So two of the ones that I've gotten so far is one allows you to once you gain this thing called empowerment. And empowerment is represented by like two little pips underneath your cursor in the center of the screen, your aim point in the center of the screen. Once that's powered up, then the two powers I have is one allows you to kind of do a jump slam and slam the spear into the ground, and then it does an AoE impact effect, right? It sends kind of like a gravity wave across and hits multiple enemies within the AoE. And then another one that I have allows you to throw the spear and recall it. And I think that is and I think there are two. I think once you hit the empowerment, that is actually charged twice, so you can get two spear throws. Now, you say, well, why is that a big difference? Because you could already, shoot the chain out of the spear. The difference is that now you have this ranged melee attack, but it doesn't pull you in close, right, to the demon. So you can actually chuck the spear and recall it, and then maintain your distance. All on the way, you have all of your other standard weapons. So you have the rocket launcher, and then you have modes on each of those weapons. So you could take the rocket launcher and flip it into a grenade launcher mode. You have a machine gun that you can, transform into like a splinter spike shooter, and other things. So you have all those same powers as well. The point I just got to, you can also now you can upgrade either the chain spear or you can upgrade your armor. So, I'm starting down that upgrade path as well. So what it results in is, and the combat has been amped up. There are typically more enemies that come on the screen. It seems like there are new enemy types being introduced, which is pretty dope, because one of the things that is typically a common problem with a shooter is too few, like there's not enough variation in enemies. So some of the new enemies types that they're introducing are kind of palette swaps, but they do introduce new abilities. One of the things they introduce is like a Blight Knight, which when the Blight Knight is about to be killed or his health gets low, he like jumps up and pounds the ground, and he does an impact ripple that hits everything on the screen, right? And so then at that point, you have to either like take cover and not impact it. You can hit him with the equivalent of a parry to interrupt the charge explosion and things like that. With the chain spear, you can parry as well, so the parry is still in the game. You just don't use the shield. You basically take the chain spear and do this a wide arc swing, and that impacts any of the green projectiles that are thrown at you and slings them back at the enemy. So it's pretty dope. Like I said, combat gets pretty frenetic, but the main thing is that it increases, like it gives them it gives them the developers some options for level design in terms of increasing the verticality. Increasing the verticality is not that big of a deal in combat, but you get a lot of what I would call you get a lot of horizontal aerial combat, right? So you don't get that far off the ground, but you do get raised up a bit off the ground. I don't know, maybe 3 times the height of your Doom guy, which is pretty high up, because he's tall. But the main thing is that once you're up there, you can use that radial capability of the chain spear to like swing around an enemy. So you can both chain spear an enemy with the extended chain, get pulled in close to them, and then just hit them with melee as you get in close. You can go over the top of them and fire down on them. You can swing around behind them and then shoot them. So particularly the guys on the enemy types that are shielded, another new tactic that you can do is you can throw the chain spear, hit one of their shields, get pulled in close, swing around them and land behind them, and then hit them with melee. So then now you're behind them and their shields are ineffective. So it's pretty dope. You get a lot more combat options. I will say it is definitely hitting the point that I've talked about on this show before of a shooter that definitely makes you feel like a superhero, but also gives you a almost too many powers where their actuation is very close, right, in terms of the buttonology. So it's like you go into combat, you have your weapon in your right hand, you have the chain spear in the left hand. So I throw the chain spear at the guy, I get pulled in close. Okay, now am I going to hit them with melee? Am I going to whip around behind them? And am I going to go over them and shoot down? But then the other thing, going back to Doom Eternal, they've introduced is a double dash in the air. So you will have times that you can use the double dash in combat. It's not just for traversal. But the other thing you have to do is then you get those additional powers that I talked about, but those can only be actuated through empowerment. The only way to get empowerment is to do a perfect dodge of enemy attacks. So now you're thinking about, and what will happen is, as you're fighting particularly tough enemies, normally I'm not worried about empowerment, but as you're fighting particularly tough enemies, and particularly as the enemy number grows, you're in the combat cycle, right? And you start thinking, oh, I need to ground smash because I got to clear some of these enemies out. Like they're getting too much. I'm getting overwhelmed. Well, before you can do that, now you've got to hit like 4 perfect dodges in a row, right, to power up your empowerment. And it's not that difficult. You can actually quite often hit, like if there's a ton of enemies, if you just spam dodge, you're going to hit 4 perfect dodges, right? Because there's constantly stuff coming at you. So you're actually going to pull it off by luck. But what you've got to watch is, while you may effectively dodge 1 attack, you may also get hit by like another 2, right? So you've got to manage that whole, the battle space, but you also have to manage your health, right? Hey, I'm going to perfect dodge, but while I'm perfect dodging to power up my empowerment, I'm probably going to get hit a couple times. So, what's the speed leader in combat turn time, right, between me hitting the perfect dodge and gaining empowerment and me taking chip damage, right, in terms of my health. So it does make things not necessarily complicated, but like that OODA loop of what you're doing in combat is now significantly more complex than it was in Doom: The Dark Ages. So it's a significant shift in a DLC, right? Normally DLC, I will say, just introduces you to more tasks, right? But it's not every DLC that introduces completely new combat mechanics, right, that significantly change the facet of the game that you played the first time around. So it's pretty dope. I'm super happy that I just like at a random moment in time decided to plunk down $20 and get it. It is a joy. Like when I get done with a set piece of combat when I'm fighting a big boss, and you get like the music tones down and like the new pip on the map comes up showing you, okay, the door's open now. You get like in that moment in time, that breather, I'm very conscious of the fact that like, okay, like my heart rate is up. I'm breathing a little heavier. Like I was working, right. And I was enjoying myself and I was excited, right, while I was going through that. And that's, an easy like marker to tell that you're, having a good time playing a game.
I think that helps with the music too, right? Because the music's always kind of like heavy metalish rock, always pumping.
Is a very big goth metal track going on the whole time. Yeah.
Yeah. A couple questions I had. So the chain spear, the grappling, other than the enemies, like you said, I think. So you can. There's only grapple points. You can't like just grapple onto any piece of like cliff or whatever's by you.
Yeah, no, it's not random. It's it's set, and and it does provide those same moments that you kind of had in if you played Halo Infinite, particularly multiplayer. There were those instances where you got knocked off, right, and we're headed towards dying, but you could shoot the grapple, which in that you didn't have grapple points, but there are moments here where you would get knocked over an edge and be about to to buy it, right, to get killed. But as you're as you're descending, right, there's a split second where you might get within range of an enemy, and the pip will come up, and like again, one of those exciting moments. You'll fire the chain spear and get pulled back up, right, and get right back in the fight. So it's pretty awesome. But yeah, there are not specific. There are specific chain grapple points or enemies, right? So either one of those two things is what enables you to use the chain spear as a grapple.
Is there like a cooldown, or can you like just chain spear to enemy? Just kind of go bouncing around.
I think there's like a microsecond of a cooldown. Like I don't think you can spam it. But it's pretty quick. There have been what it has to do. It basically it has to lock on, and I think that's the key thing, right? So if you've got to get the cursor has to at least go, the aim point has to at least go over like the center point, right? You have to get that pip. So there will be moments where you're kind of swinging and bouncing around because you're being attacked by like 24 different enemies, and I'll be in close on someone, and I'll hit them with melee, and then I'll try and chain spear them, but for whatever reason, like it doesn't click the lock on. So there is that element in there.
All right. And then as far as, and kind of go back to the story, obviously without any spoilers. So was the ending of the main game for the DLC? Did that feel like a good ending, or does the DLC like kind of work off? I guess it kind of works off of it anyways. But is it like a cliffhanger at the end of the regular game, or is it pretty much a good kind of like, hey, this game ended, and DLC is more of just like here's some more stuff that happens.
Yeah, I mean it's a bit of a cliffhanger. It's a Doom cliffhanger, so it's not like, I mean, for me personally, like it's not like you're like Doom always continues, right? So it's not like you're like salivating. And I think when it ended, I wasn't consciously aware that there was like DLC coming, so I wasn't that wrapped around the axle about like, oh, I'm super excited to play the DLC because of this cliffhanger. It seemed yes, it's a cliffhanger, but it's a very like tropish average. It's not like an MCU cutscene. Right. But I mean, the cool thing is, yes, the DLC is the beginning of the DLC directly hitches to the back of the cooldown of the first game of the game itself. So it is very, very linear, very makes sense, which I don't think is a horrible thing. Is a compliment with aspects of the Doom lore, which is like super confusing and chaotic and difficult to follow in that. Like it just seems like a jumbled mess sometimes. So at least that was appreciated.
Nice. So no Nick Fury like saying he's putting together a Doom squad or anything like that right at the end.
Yeah, it was not a life model decoy.
All right. Any other things on Doom Revelations?
No, it's very cool. And same thing, just as performant, as it always has been. Every once in a while they some developer will introduce a DLC, and for some reason, there'll be a performance problem or a hitch or a performance, downgrade or something, but none of that here. Just as butter smooth as it has been.
All right. And then since I haven't been on for a while, and I always like to ask this question, why PC, or you just that was kind of up for PC, or you just didn't want to play it on Xbox?
Yeah, I tend to play first-person shooters on PC. I'm actually since this generation, I've staunchly instantiated a pretty rigid rule that if it's a first-person shooter, I'm going to play it on PC, and that's where I played Doom: The Dark Ages, and I played it on Steam. So, playing it on console wasn't really an option for the DLC.
Nice, cool. All right, let's jump into segment 2, the main news headlines and Game Logic. You have the first story here. And speaking of consoles and Steam, we'll jump into your first news story here. Hope I don't hear you. You might be muted or something happened.
Oh yeah, sorry. Sorry. So yeah, this first news story over on Eurogamer by Don Papiet. As Xbox and PlayStation flounder, Steam is reportedly having another record year. Zoom out over the last decade and things get really crazy. Valve's PC storefront Steam continues to go from strength to strength. In the first half of 2026, it recorded its highest ever results, generating an enormous $11.1 billion in revenue, which is more than it made during the game-heavy end of last year and considerably more than it made during the first half of 2025. And just as a point of reference, so supposedly they made about $17 billion in revenue last year. This has them tracking towards 22, so a $5 billion year-over-year increase. That's according to estimates by number cruncher Alinea Analytics and Reese Elliott, the head of market analysis there. I don't put a lot of stock in Alinea Analytics. The 17 billion though was sourced from someone else who's more trusted. When I saw that number last year, so reckons there are a myriad reasons why Steam's doing so well. The prevalence of the Chinese market, higher prices on new releases, and third-party publishers returning to the storefront after dropping their own game launchers are all viable reasons for Valve's continued growth. That first part is especially notable. The Chinese market is massive, and as far back as February 2025, 50% of all Steam accounts belong to Chinese-speaking users. So, things are interesting on the PC front. In the last year or two, revenue in the PC part of the combined PC console market has exceeded console earnings. I don't take that over under to be to the wild extrapolations that some people do. It's a modicum split. It's like 53 billion. I think if I saw it when I saw it, it was like 53 billion, maybe on PC, or maybe 50 billion on PC, and like 42 billion or whatever on console. So it wasn't, a huge separation. It was also, at a time, over the last 2 years, like I said, one of those years was the year that they were, Nintendo was only putting out the Switch, and you also have the Xbox in like severe decline. And I think I'm waiting 2 more weeks to the Microsoft earnings call. I believe Xbox could be down as low as 18 or 19 billion, maybe 20 billion at the top. So, there has been money being drained out of the console market. But this is interesting. I mean, regardless, both of those things are kind of seen as core gaming in aggregate. So, regardless of who's doing better, or which subsector is doing better than the other, I don't think it's really that important. The key thing is that money is flowing into this $92 billion industry, and when kind of some, I will say, crazy yahoos run around talking about the market is going to crash, I'm like, I don't think it's feasible for $92 billion of a industry, of a market, to be drained out of the industry overnight. When we had the video game market crash of North America in 1983, the market was like a tenth of the size of what it is now, if that. So I think it will be just fine. But it is good, right, to see PC doing well. I don't know, Tao, any thoughts?
No, yeah, I was just looking through the article, just interesting on some of the bigger games. Forza Horizon 6 is one of the biggest games this year so far, with Resident Evil Requiem pretty much right behind it. Crimson Desert's up there, which is newer, I guess newer IPs, but technically, even though it's kind of offshoot of the MMO RPG that it came from, and then a couple of the or a few of indies, Slay the Spire 2, Subnautica 2, and then Mecha Chameleon, which I just heard about recently, which is I think is one of those kind of co-op. I want to say like it's co-op, not in battle, but you kind of work together. But sometimes your teammates get left behind and stuff like that. I'm trying to think of other games like that, and I can't think of any at the top of my head. But there's been a few games like that recently, so kind of a bigger up on top of the Steam charts. So it's interesting.
Yeah, and again, this is Alinea Analytics, which I have a staunch reputation for calling out as inaccurate and unreliable. I don't personally put a lot of stock in these numbers. They're all guesswork. They do things like they look at total numbers of user reviews and extrapolate that number to sales, which I think is kind of a ridiculous junior high school level algebra way of estimating sales. What I will say is what's very, very, very super reliable is at the end of every year, Steam puts out a chart where they have things by metal levels. So they have platinum, gold, silver, and bronze, and they don't put out the numbers, but you can tell, right, based on what some developers have reported and what games are close to each other, kind of like what brackets they're in. So like I said, I don't put a ton of stock into these numbers in their effort to appear to be super precise with a decimal point of millions of dollars. I think that's, like I said, it's all fuzzy math. But I do know, like, in general, Mecha Chameleon is doing well. It has surprised everyone. I don't know entirely about the Forza Horizon 6 numbers. I will say that I have seen correlating metrics that have shown that Forza Horizon 6 is being played more on PC than it is on console. Like significantly more. And then when you take into account that, the vast majority of that on PC would be people buying it through Steam, that's a good thing, at least for some Xbox revenue, when the likelihood is that they're going to be moving backwards otherwise. Warwana says in the chat, Steam may not sell many game queues, but I think their OS being available is a step closer to console. Only gamers trying PC gaming. I didn't even have to install a driver at all when I did it. Yeah, the driverless aspect of Steam OS is a significant get. Not that I've ever been a console only guy, but I wanted to test the install experience and consider how hard it is for a new PC user. Yeah, I mean, building your own is not something for Luddites, but for people grabbing one that is a stock COTS appliance, it is very close to a console experience, and you really don't have to dig under the hood at all. Trying to see if there's any more comments in chat here.
Yeah, Wara and Hiradana, thanks for joining us tonight. Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely, obviously over these last few years, 4 or 5 years, I've been, pretty much PC gaming, more or less. Maybe last year, because I finally got a Switch too, and kind of been digging into that. But I'll go back to PC, depending on the games. Like, obviously, there's some games I can't play on the Switch, like Battlefield and stuff like that. But I'm hitting that. I'm part of that PC market again, which I never thought. I thought I'd always be console guy after I stopped playing PCs back in like early 2000s or so, or I'm sorry, late 2000s, maybe early teens, 20 teens. But yeah, my PC still going strong. Like I think I mentioned before, like most of the stuff I can still play with my RTX 3070. I could still play at least high, if not maxed out sometimes, depending on what it is. But still going strong, so that's nice. All right, let's jump into our next news article here. This is from Destructoid, from Andrei Barovic, I believe is how you say his name. And this is some EA game news here. EA caves under community pressure over microtransactions in latest college football title. Will remove all paid progression options. And you would think they would learn their lesson from last time, but and they actually mentioned the Battlefront 2 kind of the loot boxes from back in the day where they were kind of doing that, and they eventually got rid of those. But they seem to be doing it again, and I guess this is a little bit different because this is actually stuff where you can kind of pay to upgrade or get more experience and stuff in a couple of modes. So in the case of College Football 27, fans are hating on the microtransactions so much that EA actually caved under pressure and has vowed to remove them as soon as possible. According to PC Gamer, the latest entry in the college football series had a bunch of microtransactions whereby players could pay to speed up their progress in the game's Road to Glory and Dynasty modes, the former being a player career single-player campaign. So I'm assuming the Road to Glory was just like, I guess, MLB, the show's equivalent of just like the single-player mode, sounds like. And then obviously Dynasty mode is like one of their biggest modes, I believe, from the last few years. This led to a massive Sorry, go ahead.
I think the Road to Glory is like a and admittedly I'm guessing because I don't play that mode on college football, but I think it is like it's either an abbreviated like Dynasty mode, so like it's like you don't you don't play everything, but like MLB has that thing where I think like you play like situations, or like the game simulates and then it like calls you in to play like a particular at bat round or
Yeah.
something. It's either that or maybe that's the you create your own character, right, and play, you know, play the games where that character is on the team trying to make the playoffs or whatever. But yeah, it's something separate from the dynasty mode.
Yeah. So this led to a massive anti-MTX microtransaction campaign led by content creator Brudeau, which PC Gamer writes was primarily focused through the hashtag CFB Play Don't Pay hashtag. In response to all that, EA shared on X that it would be completely removing microtransactions from these two modes tomorrow morning, and admitted that it had missed the mark by introducing these paid progression options. And that was back on July 11th. So the next day on the 12th, they should have taken that stuff out. But yeah, so at least they, I guess for good or bad, they listen to the community this time around. I guess it's good, and getting rid of that transactions. I mean, it wasn't a single player mode, so I mean, I don't know how big of a deal, at least for that. But
actually, it was. So some of the microtransactions they're talking about are, and I don't know how many other ones there were, but so EA. So
yeah,
EA.
They only mentioned these two specifically. If there's, I don't know about anything else that might be in the game currently. So
yeah. So EA College Football has in the sliders, and I think this is what they're talking about: Road to Glory and Dynasty modes. Oh yeah. So So it is these, but I'm being a little more specific than what they put in the article. So what it had in it, there are sliders, and so one of those sliders is an XP slider, and so you can adjust how much XP you are awarded per game. And so in Dynasty mode, it is an XP slider for like your coach. So you are able to ramp up the amount of XP that your coach is awarded for each game for the purposes of like you gain, whatever points or whatever to invest in your build of the coach, right? So their bonuses and things that they get per game would increase faster, right, over time, that progression. And so that's what they're taking out. And so it's kind of, there's a certain silliness to it because that slider, I don't know how it's broken out in College Football 27, but the slider in College Football 25 and 26 is just one slider amongst like 8 dozen sliders, right, on the slider page. And so, well, it's and I say it's not all on one page because there are some mode sliders like in certain menus, and then there are user sliders and then CPU sliders. But it's buried in amongst a bunch of other settings. It's not like broken out as a standalone. And so apparently what they did this year was they locked it so that it only, I can't remember if it only presents when you pay the microtransaction or it only scales like within a certain limited range. And then when you pay, then it scales. Like, I'm not sure exactly, but like that's kind of the silliness of it. Like it's not like, in other EA games in the past, like Need for Speed, right? You could just pay to unlock all the cars, right? Or there's certain skills or players or something else like that you could unlock. But this is like paying to unlock a slider. So I don't like, when I heard this, like I don't personally, like I've touched that particular slider like one time, like just to see what it does. Like it doesn't impact whether or not you win or lose a game. Like it's not an on-field impacting slider. So I've touched it one time. First of all, because I didn't know what the heck it was or what it would do. And then when I read it and realized a little bit, like I've never touched it again. Like, yeah, I don't know. I didn't feel compelled to need to like radically increase the number of XP that my coach got. Like, I don't know. My whole point of when I play the game is I'm really trying to get to like a realistic season of football, and so I expect to have some losing seasons. I expect to, like this season where I'm playing the Mizzou Tigers, where I'm ranked, 5th. And the reality was I was ranked 5th because I had an easy first part of the schedule. And then when I went up against LSU and the Florida Gators and some of these teams that were like 90 something teams, I got beaten. And then I turned around and had some upsets, right? So that's kind of the realism of the drama that I'm looking for. So like I'm not personally going to touch the XP slider. Um and and then I'm certainly not going to be up in arms about like a microtransaction that doesn't like impact me. So it's good, I guess, that they're turning around. I was kind of surprised that they turned it around because with their impending sale to like my personal feeling is in a world where electronic arts is owned by the Saudi Arabian PIF, I think this doesn't get walked back. Right? So, you know, if you feel like you force them to walk it back, good. I don't know that it will happen again. And maybe that's a mistaken, perspective on my part, but I know Warwana said he's shocked EA mustn't have been selling many of them. I could be wrong. But I doubt that they're having a problem with sales. This has been one of the top selling games in the U.S. For the last 2 years, and not the crazy thing is not only will it pop on the Circana charts as a standalone title, it'll pop, Madden will pop, and then this MVP package where you buy the two of them together will also pop. So all three of those titles, despite the fact that at least one of them is a redundant title representative of buying the two, like all three of them will pop onto the top 20 top selling games, at least on the US charts. So it's curious. I would love to know like why they walked it back. And I wonder if it's more they were concerned that with all of the noise that they would attract a lot of attention and get into loot box legal trouble again and get hauled into court. Um, so I don't know. I would suspect if this game is being sold overseas, they would definitely pique, the interest of the areas of the economic zones where they have gotten pulled at the ear about that before. So I don't know.
Yeah, I think usually like the UK, like in Europe, they usually kind of get hit hard, don't they, for that kind of stuff. So especially the loot box stuff. But
Yeah. Where I want to say he wasn't saying the title itself. He was saying the microtransaction itself. Yeah, I could also see that. I could see,
yeah,
if you weren't making a lot of money off of that, then like why put up like you probably don't really care about the controversy, but like there's no point in putting up the controversy unless you're making money off of it. So I could see that. Yeah, good point, Warwana.
yeah. It doesn't mention in the article either how much it was. Not that I see. So I wonder what the price was, the price tag.
Yeah, I can't remember. I don't think I heard that.
Yeah, it doesn't say it in the article, unfortunately. Yeah, maybe I'll look that up. All right, so let's jump into the next news article here. News about Obsidian, our friends over at Obsidian. We'll go into some Xbox news here for these next couple of news stories.
Yeah, this news story over on Game Informer about. Okay. I don't know what to say. No, okay. Bumping my XLR cable.
Okay.
I was like, the mic felt like it cut out. I wonder if the connection's loose. Hold on a sec.
Well, Game Logic fixes his mic. Yeah, the next couple of stories will be one Obsidian and then some Xbox Union news story here to round out the news headlines.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. The XLR cable had bumped loose. This news story over on Game Informer by Marcus Stewart. Obsidian Entertainment is developing a new Fallout game. Wait, so did I read the title? Obsidian cancels Avowed sequel to begin work on a new Fallout game. Obsidian Entertainment is developing a new Fallout game, according to a report by Bloomberg. The report also states that the studio has canceled several in-development projects, including a planned sequel to its 2025 RPG Avowed. The ongoing layoffs across Xbox's gaming division have reportedly impacted roughly 25% of Obsidian staff, including longtime art director Daniel Albert. Bloomberg reports that as part of Xbox's new initiative to largely focus on its biggest existing franchises, Obsidian's development pipeline has shifted toward developing a new Fallout game. With studio design director Josh Sawyer at the helm, Obsidian has worked in this universe before, having previously made 2010's well-received Fallout New Vegas. I think the weirdest thing about this news is I have seen negative responses from gamers, and I don't quite understand that. Like, sure, like the philosophical, spiritual, like disagreement with the studio, like being told to cancel a project, it wanted to work on, um, in lieu of working on something that the corporation wanted them to work on. Yeah, maybe, but on any other day of the week, gamers are shouting about why in the world did the platform owner let them work on that title. So I feel like there's a lot of I get it. It's very difficult to parse, right, the porcupine needles when you feel like a business, where you feel like a business has done a thing, and so now everything that they're doing is bad. Um, I don't necessarily agree with that. I constantly talk about how, part of the problem with the gaming conversation is that all the nuance and sophistication gets drained out of it until, it's diluted to the point where it's conversation for the lowest common denominators, which is just not a conversation I'm interested in having. I enjoyed Avowed. So the weird thing about this too is, yes, there's some people who enjoyed Avowed, not a ton of people. I think um, there are way more people who have been wanting Obsidian to do Fallout New Vegas, and so, or a sequel to it or something like it. And I'm like, so now that they're telling them to do this, now there's this big outcry, and I'm like, I don't get that. Like, I understand Xbox is in the doghouse right now. I get that. I get that there's a loud outcry that like anything that they do is bad, and to a certain extent, like there's a certain element to that which I agree, but I'm also like, you know, a lot of you guys have been wanting a new Fallout New Vegas game or a new Fallout game from Obsidian, and like here it is. Like, so if there's one good thing that comes out of like the dumpster fire that this has been for the last couple of weeks, maybe this is it. And I'm saying that on behalf of people who want that sequel, because quite frankly, I don't know that I believe this game is ever going to come out. Right? Um, they're 20. You've knocked off 25% of their staff. Morale is at an all-time low. Everybody's looking over their shoulder. You're going to knock off 1,600 more people this year, which means there's a singular mathematical truth to that. You are either going to hit the studios that you haven't touched or that went relatively unscathed. So you're going to take it out of the Call of Duty team across like the 9 studios that they have. You're going to take it out of Blizzard. You're going to take it out of Machine Games. You're going to take it out of Playground Studios. So like the studios that went unscathed, you're going to target them. Or you're going to target and take more out of the studios that you've already relatively crippled to a point where they definitively can't get a game out. And Obsidian, this guy would argue, is kind of, already to a certain extent at that. But, but I don't know. It seems like a weird, it just seemed like a weird response to me. I don't know, Tal, your thoughts on this?
No, yeah, I mean, yeah, it's like Henry Heck says, damn if you do, damn if you don't. So people love to complain. Um, I, I had a thought now. I completely lost it. But yeah, I mean, they mentioned in that article too, like how Avowed, like they had released Avowed, Outer Worlds 2, and Grounded 2 back last year, and Avowed and Outer Worlds 2 had, even though there was very positive, reviews and generally positive among, gamers and stuff, it just, it didn't do the numbers, unfortunately. So I played Avowed. I loved Avowed. I thought it was a really good game. Nothing super, you know, revolutionary about it or anything. It was just a fun game to play. I like playing that game. Outer Worlds 2, and I didn't play. I've played a little bit of the first Outer Worlds, and I enjoyed what I had played. I'd like to get back to that one actually, eventually. But yeah, it's just I think it's just the Xbox news coming out. Something bad happened to one of the um, developers. So it's just everyone's going to jump on it. So it just sucks, unfortunately. I mean, I could see maybe like you mentioned, you're not sure that this is going to come out. I think it has a good chance. Like Fallout's been on a good upswing as of late. I mean, not just the games, but the TV. You have the TV show too, and that's doing gangbusters. I think the second season had just finished this year, and as far as I can tell, everybody loved that too. So it's a good chance that maybe they can try to get that out. Now, obviously, like you said, it's just manpower. There might not just be they have the manpower there to actually do it, but you know, I think on top of all the layoffs too, and then you have people just naturally they'll just leave just because they're kind of afraid of what their job holds if they're going to stay there or not. So, and that's could be a big number, it could be just a small number, but still, that's still going to hurt the developer.
Yeah, I've mentioned you're kind of in the worst of any of those situations, right? You're whatever your rubric is for laying people off, right? You are most likely following some logic where you're either getting rid of the most expensive people, the underperformers, the people who are in skill sets that you don't need or that you envision you can do without. But the big problem is that while you are taking that approach, then as you mentioned, Tal, like a key thing to keep in mind is that now you're going to lose people who voluntarily decide to go somewhere else, and the people who that is going to be are going to be your high potential, high talent people, because those people are the people who can go get jobs, right? Those people, your high talented people, are the ones that are in demand. They can float their resume and will potentially get picked up somewhere. And yes, I know it's a tough time, in the industry, but there's always going to be some studio, right, that needs somebody who's highly talented with a skill set. So, I mean, those, and then again, so then you are again with a studio who's going to be crippled, right, and have a very difficult time getting a game out without being able to, hire back, talent that they need. They're just going to be depleted. There's a certain point. I keep using Titanic as an analog, right? There's a certain point where the bow tips down enough that it's just going to plunge to the bottom of the ocean, like no matter what. Like there is no more keeping it afloat. So, we'll see how that goes. And like you said, Tao, and Henry Heck is saying too, I mean, I will say, of all of the things that have been happening at Xbox, which I hate and despise and point to as just an egregious amount of dishonesty and, like, to a certain extent, a lack of ethical approach to running a business, this is one decision that I really can't find a problem with. Like, you're in a situation where the studios that you acquired to make content to drive your subscription service by volume, not necessarily by every game being Stranger Things, right? But for every game to be something in the subscription service landing frequently enough. Number one, Obsidian carried the entire Xbox business for the first 2 or 3 years of the generation. Like, the only people who were putting games out was Obsidian. And so
somewhat regularly too. So.
Yes, on a regular cadence. Like they put, like they mentioned, like the year Avowed came out, like they put out Avowed and the Outer Worlds 2. Like, what other studio do you have that put out 2, near AAA games? So, but as you guys both pointed out, but we also know from the interview with the head of Obsidian at the beginning of the year in January with Bloomberg, he said very openly, Avowed did not meet internal expectations. So, you've got bodies on titles that are probably not going to do for you what you need from a business perspective, and you're going to pull them off. I mean, and the other thing we need to keep in mind, I think, the people who are pointing to this with disdain is also understand what happened, because for this to happen, somebody had to go into Todd Howard, strong arm him, and say, yeah, I don't care if you don't want anybody working on Fallout. Obsidian's going to work in Fallout. Right. And if you want to have a discussion about that, you can have a discussion with me about it, from the unemployment line. So the fact that happened is very significant. And so I don't know that we should, look at what's going on with Obsidian taking on this title with, a ton of pushback.
Yeah, I think, and I hate to say this too, but the other thing with and just general with all the layoffs that have been happening, I mean, whoever was in office, was it was Phil Spencer or Asha, this was going to happen at some point because they had to have, like with all the companies they had brought in, it just wasn't sustainable to kind of keep all those people there like that. Like they could have shuffled people around, I guess, at some point, but at some point there was probably going to be, some kind of layoffs of some sort. Like obviously, and now obviously this is like a huge amount. Like I don't know if it would have been this big, but we're probably going to see some kind of layoffs at some point. After all these studios had come on, so it just and at least some of them, they kind of parted ways, in good. I'll say good terms. Some of them went independent from all this, so they were able to do that. And some people might wonder why didn't they just do that with all of them? It's like sometimes like that can't happen. Like it just can't. Like or people just don't want to do that. Like within those developers, within those studios. So I don't know. It's kind of a big mess. I guess just in general. But
Yeah, I mean the metrics with the resulting impact being you have basically laid off almost 50% of the division at the height of its size post acquisition. Like I can't find a way in any way to find that like forgivable or excusable. And like I keep saying, like it's amazing to me that somebody is not hunting Satya, asking for Satya Nadella's head on a platter. I can't. Maybe because I haven't hit I can't think of a case study where a CEO greenlit an acquisition. First of all, there has been no CEO who's greenlit that large of an acquisition because it was the largest acquisition in the entertainment industry, right at the time that it went down. So I cannot think of a CEO who's greenlit that size of an acquisition and then has turned around within 2 years, and because the business strategy failed despite the investment, has wound up laying off 50%, of almost 50% of the headcount, but also is running a business essentially at cost, right? Like at a 3% profit margin, that basically means that, to run a $24 billion business, they are almost spending $24 billion a year, to make that business go and have 3 cents to put in their pocket for every dollar of sales that they make. And so it's just like I don't get it. Oh yeah, there has been one CEO who made a major multi-billion-dollar acquisition and then turned around and shut the business down. Satya Nadella, when he bought Nokia and then shut down Windows Phone. So it's super weird. He admittedly he may not have bought. I think Steve Ballmer. I think Steve Ballmer was the bottom line signer actually on the Nokia acquisition. I think that was one of his last things before he left. I think. But it's still crazy that that was handed unto Satya Nadella, and in a very short amount of time they had less than 1% market share and turned around and shut that business down, and they have in fact exceeded that because the Xbox business is about 3 times the size of what their smartphone business was. So just crazy times.
Here down under. I was about to correct you. He says he thought of it. All right. Let's jump into the next. We'll keep on the Xbox train here and jump into our last news story for the night.
Yeah, this one is interesting. Along with all of the kind of union and labor stuff that we keep up with on this channel and that I talk about on the Games Memo. This news story over on Game Developer by Chris Kerr. We mean business. Xbox union workers fighting back with Save Our Devs rally on July 15th. Bethesda Game Studios union workers under the One BGS banner will hold a Save Our Devs march in protest of yet another round of mass layoffs across Xbox. An email sent to union members by the One BGS mobilizing committee obtained by Game Developer and multiple call to actions shared online have confirmed the rally will be held on July 15th. I guess this is at the offices of ZeniMax Studios in Rockville, Austin, Dallas, and Montreal. It's really unfortunate that they are not able to do something on the Redmond campus, because I feel like politically that's where you need to actually send the biggest signal. Because it's not ZeniMax who decided to make these layoffs, right? It's where the flag is planted at the HQ. Microsoft and ZeniMax leadership have made the devastating decision to slash over 440 positions across BGS, ZOS, ID, ZWA, I guess, I don't know, QA, and ZeniMax corporate, including the CTO and CSUR. Because we organized and certified our unions, we have hard-won legal rights and protections that non-unionized studios simply do not have, said the union. The company wants us to accept this as a done deal and quietly disappear. We won't let that happen. Our next steps are to mobilize. We need every single member visible and unified. Now, Tao, maybe you understand the legality of this better than I do. So as far as I know, they don't have any rights to stop the layoff. What they have rights to do is to intervene in negotiations for I'm sorry, I've been cycling banners at all. To soften the blow and and make sure that the severance packages are commensurate. So hopefully they will be able to do that. The one interesting nit that I have come across this that I think a lot of people are not aware of and other reporters have missed is that in the run up to the acquisition, Microsoft, the CWA, the something Workers Alliance, one of the major unions in the U.S., in January of 2022, after Microsoft announced their intention to acquire Activision Blizzard, the CWA put out a memo, publicly posted, that opposed the acquisition. And then 6 months later, in June, Microsoft and the CWA agreed to sign a labor neutrality agreement where Microsoft pledged to not intervene in any unionization efforts within Microsoft, which was kind of a landmark, significant signing of such a thing, because Microsoft had kind of historically discouraged unions over its 50-year existence or so, 40-year existence, and so everybody applauded this as a big deal. And a lot of Xbox fans kind of ran with the flag and said, "Oh, this is going to be great. The employees are going to unionize." Well, like I said, the thing that a lot of people are missing is that labor neutrality agreement expired in October of 2025. And there are various reports indicating that a lot of the people who have been impacted by these layoffs have been people who have joined unions. So I do not know if that is systematic or programmatic, but the main point is that in the dynamic of the power struggle between the union and the corporation, the union has severely become underpowered right now that these things are occurring after the expiration of that agreement. I don't know, Tao, any thoughts?
Yeah, reading the when I was reading this article, I think I'd seen it somewhere else, one of the other news sites, but they kind of mentioned it here too near the bottom. So like the first thing they're trying to do is push for relocation throughout the Xbox as a whole, like trying to relocate these users, just I guess specifically from these studios, to other developers and to other studios. And if they can't do that, then at least negotiating a more aggressive like severance package, and just insurance and all that happens when when you get let go, unfortunately. But yeah, so which is I guess that's good. Like they're at least trying to get, I'm assuming, more money or just maybe more time for like when they're let go on like I said, like the health stuff and all that, healthcare and all that. So that's pretty much what they're trying to fight for here. But yeah, it's I guess it's good, that they're fighting like this, and it's interesting. I didn't realize that the majority. Oh, I don't say majority, but some, a lot of these people were, part of the union that they had organized. But that's pretty interesting. I guess one of their fights is, I'm trying to look for it here in the article. The cuts being framed by Microsoft as entrepreneurial change in the scope of the business. The union has rejected that claim and said it will push Microsoft to relocate laid off members, place them into open roles. Trying to find where the other one is here. Just because of this kind of a weird quote here, claiming they are transitioning from a studio-based model to a franchise-based model to dodge their legal obligation to bargain to bargain the decision with us. We completely reject this corporate wordplay. Changing a title on a PowerPoint slide does not erase our legal rights to say our working conditions. Reads the email. So, yeah, it's interesting to see. It'll be interesting to see how this pans out. Like if they're able to actually get people move to other studios and publishers or whatnot, or if it's that's not even a factor, and they're just trying to get better benefits for them. So we'll see what happens with this going forward. And I guess depending on the outcome, it could be pretty big, depending on what happens. Like if they actually can get people moved to other studios, I guess that'd be a pretty big deal. Instead of just laying them off like they're attending to, like Microsoft was going to attend to in the first place.
Yeah, I don't know. My problem with this is I just foresee, like, unless they get a strong political partner intervening, like, I just don't know. I mean, this is the corporation that lawyered up, right, and was able to pull off the acquisition. And right now, like, even if they got even if they got a Democratic supporter, I don't know that they wouldn't experience Republican push. I mean, it's a Republican FTC, it's Republican courts. Like, it's going to be tough. Like, their best deal would be to get cross-party support, and you have Microsoft in Washington, and I can't remember what Washington is, but Maryland, where a lot of Bethesda is located. I believe it's the Democratic governor. But yeah, I just don't know. I just don't know what they're going to be able to pull off in this environment. We have historic, for a large part of the history and the part of history that we're writing on now, we have primarily been a pro-corporate, pro-acquisition company, country, and we are not living in a time where unions get a ton of support. So, and I mean, in the writers and the actors, right? All of it, like, I didn't see any like huge political support rallying behind them. They had to fight completely on their own, right, with the Hollywood studios and video streaming services. So I don't know. I don't know where this is going to go.
I guess the other side to it is like how long is this going to take? Like this fight, like, overall it might be a good thing, but individually, like, people, they're not going to be making money at the time. So obviously they're going to have to go find jobs and stuff. So
yeah. War want to ask, what business venture that isn't an enterprise, right? What business venture that is not enterprise has Microsoft ever succeeded in? And I don't know. I tried. I thought. I mean, Microsoft Surface. You could say. I would say Microsoft Surface achieved its objective, and their winding down of that is by choice. Like, I don't think they were run out of the, like, Surface market. They could have continued making that a viable business niche, boutique business. It didn't really have any, like, market share or revenue objectives. It was completely a brand objective to not allow Apple to have the entirety of the market share. I will also say, during the time period that Johnny Ive was in charge of all hardware at Apple, after Steve Jobs passed and the reins had been entirely handed over to Tim Cook, there was a period of time where the way they were treating the MacBook Pro line, the vast majority of the Apple community just determined and assessed that Apple didn't care about the MacBook Pro line of products. And during that time, there were a lot of creative professionals who exited the ecosystem and found Windows solutions to their needs for video editing and visual effects and all that type of stuff. There were some studios who converted, like, who were Apple studios who converted to Windows products. And once a business makes that hundreds of thousands of dollars in equipment and software outlay, they're unlikely to return to the camp. So, and again, part of that was business, but part of that was like prosumer as well. So, during that time, again, Surface didn't necessarily, Surface found a comfortable footing in what it needed to be and what it needed to do. But like, that's the only thing that I can think of that was close. I mean, I guess you could call Solitaire and Minesweeper successful.
Hey, they're still going. So, and on every machine they put out there.
Hey, some people count them as PC gamers.
Yep, it's a game. It's on a PC.
Whenever you see those metrics that like tout some like ridiculous number of PC gamers like approaching 1 billion, I'm like, yeah, they're counting people playing Minesweeper Solitaire. They're not counting paying customers.
Yeah. All right. Anything else on the old Xbox Union here?
No. I think that's nope. I think that's it.
All right, let's jump into our segment 3, our regular rundown and round robin. You got a couple games here. I think one that you had mentioned before, Forza Horizon 6.
Yeah, so I've the engagement on PC is kind of lasting longer. I started playing Forza Horizon 6 up through, I don't know, maybe the first 20 hours or so on Xbox, maybe the first 24. I've continued to put, maybe a dozen more hours in on it on PC. It looks great on PC. I will say, so it looks great on PC and plays fine when you are in offline mode. Friend of the show, Ramon Terrell, and I were playing, and the Real Innate as well, we're playing online. And I had a horrible experience on PC. I started seeing all of like the memory leak problems that had plagued Forza Horizon 5, and it claiming that it was like running out of CPU and GPU VRAM and all this kind of crazy stuff. So, but in single player mode, in offline mode, it plays fine. What I do feel that I've seen is some rubber banding, where like I feel like I see like a sudden acceleration of the car across a few frames. I'm not absolutely positive on that. I will say, if you go read, there's a Digital Foundry article that has a table of tweaks that they recommend you to make on your system, and I've put in all those tweaks. It's just it's a weird software package where in general you can say it's a performant game, but you can also say that there are across like 16 different settings, there are some of those which are kind of Achilles heel, which even if you have a powerful system, you may not want to set it extreme. You may want to set it ultra or high, which is what their table has, right, for even powerful systems. So I put those tweaks in, and those seem to give me a better overall experience. Again, I was playing today. I had been playing the last couple of days on the ultra wide screen OLED, and so again, it looks gorgeous. That rubber banding, though, kind of has thrown me off a couple times, but I think with those tweaks in place, I see a little better. But my main concern is I think that there's a frame pacing problem, but I really don't want to rig all my instrumentation to test that. So I think it's settled down enough that I'll just leave it alone and continue playing it. But other than those things, which admittedly are game logic, level problems, that other people probably won't notice. I've been having a fine time with it.
Nice. All right, and then your second game, Horizon Zero Dawn Remastered, which I actually do have to get back to that game. I was playing. I actually got that on Steam, I believe, a year or so ago.
Yeah. So I have never gotten the remastered version of this. I had it on PC, and I was like, this game looks fine enough on PC. But I had it on, I have it on PlayStation as well, and I don't know. I guess while I've been, not super crazy about, plunking down for new games, I had a window. I was like, oh, fine, I'll pay the $10 and do the upgrade. And actually, this is me playing it. So I have been playing on the PlayStation 5 Pro, but this is actually me playing it on the PlayStation Portal. which, for, and I've played a couple sessions on Portal, one of which went fine, one of which, wasn't as great from a network performance perspective, but overall it's fine. I will say, this, it's a bit of a glow up in terms of, the additional enhancements and stuff that have been put in place. I will say, I don't feel it's as much of a glow up as you might otherwise want. And again, this was a remaster that came along. I don't remember exactly what year this came out, but for me, I feel like it's fairly early in the PlayStation 5 generation. And I don't know. I don't think this has PS5 Pro enhancements, but if you want the best version of a game that you really love, I mean, this is certainly worth it. If you're looking for, to me, I feel like I can definitively tell like the visual difference between like this game and a game that came out, in 2024, 2025, which isn't, necessarily say that that's not expected. So I think, this is definitely for people who really, really, really like Horizon Zero Dawn. Or people playing it for the first time, who want the absolute best version and maybe are on a PS5 Pro. But this has always been a game that I've enjoyed, like the mechanics of, and enjoy the kind of the creative approach on this. Like playing this back from the very beginning. It's a pretty awesome intro training montage. When she jumps across the canyon, as a child, and then lands as like grown up Aloy, and then and again, these are all cutscene type stuff, but when she does the running slide, again, it's in the training montage, and she fires up at the underbelly of the mech, and takes it down. So it's been pretty cool. And I've enjoyed like getting back in touch with the mechanics and kind of going through that. I'm weak. I really need to be really I need to be really cautious, and then kind of learning exactly kind of how powerful you are and the tools and things that they give to you. Also paying a little more attention this time to like the progression and like the notion of my build in this than I did before. So yeah, having a good time playing it.
Nice. Yeah, this came out. The remaster came out October 31st of 2024. It's the release date. So yeah, I was like this. I really liked the world, and I enjoyed the game, but I always kind of thought this was probably be a pretty cool like movie or TV show, just because of the world building. You can kind of and just kind of the mystery of like what's going on in the story and stuff. So
Yeah, I want to
yeah,
say, isn't this? I thought I heard that this was like one of the properties that's in works for some type of production. So I
I
don't know if I'm
believe
accurate
so.
on
Yeah,
that.
I haven't heard anything in a while though, so I don't know if it's still going on or not. But yeah, it would definitely be pretty cool. Uh, in other media. So yeah, I definitely had when I was playing this, I had to rethink like my strategies and stuff. Like here, there's a lot of kind of hiding and stuff, and set traps, and for the different creatures. At least early on, like maybe later on, you're kind of more powerful, and you can might be able to take them on a little bit more. But coming from FPS games and coming to this, it was definitely you had to rethink stuff how you played it. So very cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's well known that I'm not a huge like fan of like stealth type games, you know, but it is neat, even here, like, I'm just in the opening stages and just got like my first 3 skill points, and but I picked the silent kill capability, which is a progression rung on the ladder. Um, and so even though you are fairly weak in comparison to these, it's like it's pretty neat, right? That you can, if you don't mind the stealth as much, that you can do, a one hit takedown, you know, with some of these mechs, and and like I said, you're learning things here, learning how to play with the geometry, and as I'm being bracketed, by 2 mechs on alert here, coming in, and just understanding, where you can be, where you can, to avoid them, and then like I said, and then still pull off you know, the one hit kill. So it's pretty neat. I'm looking forward to play more. And it's been neat, playing it on the portal.
So you playing it? Are you playing it? You streaming it from your PS5 or because I see you're
Yes.
in. Okay.
Yeah, I don't subscribe to PS Plus, so I don't have access to the cloud gaming. And
Okay.
even when I was subscribed, it wasn't something that I used. I always stream from the PS Plus. And so,
And then you're.
yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Sorry, I was just saying you're capturing the stream from the portal, or like how was that?
No, so the stream is actually captured from the PS5, right? So
Oh, okay.
you're on the
Gotcha.
portal, which brings up essentially the equivalent of a VDD, right? You're basically remoted into your PlayStation, and it
All right.
brings the virtual desktop on the PlayStation. And so when you hit the share button, it's actually the PlayStation 5 Pro that's recording it. So yeah,
Gotcha.
which
So
is
it's like the Wii
pretty neat
U.
little trick. What's
Where you
that?
had it's like the Wii U because you had the little gamepad where you can like play stuff on while it was running
Right,
on the machine, actual machine. So
right, right.
it's kind of cool. All right. Um, Henry Heck says finished and thoroughly enjoyed the Adventures of Elliot. Yeah, I got to get that's another game I have to get back to. Actually, well, I've been kind of playing it a little bit off and on last like week and a half ish, not as much as I would like. And then he says now jump back into Saris to finish that up. Yeah, I definitely want to. Adventures of Elliot. It's a really cool game. I'm really liking it so far. But as far as me, there's other than that, like I've been playing a little bit of Elliot. Excuse me, a little bit Elliot. I haven't, like I said, I didn't really haven't played anything new these past few weeks that I've been gone. I've been jumping back and forth between when I have time. Like I usually just had like an hour or so, maybe a couple hours at night, and then just been playing some quick things like Tomodachi Life still, and then jumping. I've gone back to. I think I mentioned this a while ago. MLB The Show 23. I've been really kind of hardcore back into that, just playing through seasons. I think I'm like the year 2030 now as far as in my career, my road to the show. That's the mode I was trying to think of earlier. That's where you kind of create your character, and then I think you can like change it. You can play everything if you wanted to, but I have it just where it's like abbreviated, like you said, like it's just you just come up to your at bats and stuff like that. And I think I'm like a hybrid, like outfielder plus like relief pitcher. So sometimes some games I'm just like pitching for just like last inning or two. But one game I have been playing the last few days has been Palworld again. They had their big 1.0 release, so their full game release. They're out of early access finally after like I think 2 years, year and a half or so. It's been a while. Unfortunately, I haven't. Like I said, I've only been a couple days that I've played it, so I started a new build. You didn't have to, but I was kind of recommended. So I was just like, I'm just gonna. Most of these like survival games like this, I'll start a new build anyways, and I wasn't super far into my last game, so it wasn't a huge deal this time around to start a new one. But I guess the first big thing is like the graphics have gotten a pretty decent overhaul. So everything's a lot cleaner. Like there's not a lot of there are some like pop-ins and just kind of rough like tears and like kind of the environments and stuff like that. Like when you're walking around and here, everything is like pretty smooth and just graphics are a lot brighter and just everything looks a lot cleaner and stuff. So there's one new area for sure that they've added. It's like a floating island you kind of see in the horizon. I don't think I could even get to. I mean, I could probably get to it, but I'd probably be like just destroyed like right away because I'm early game. But so just kind of going through, and you kind of see like different environmental things. Like there's what they call sanctuaries in the game where you're not supposed to hunt or capture the pals in those areas. And before it was just kind of an island, kind of out in like the sea, and you have to have like certain either like a flying pal or one that can go on water to get to it. And really, other than just kind of knowing where it is, that's like the only way you kind of knew what that was. But now there's kind of like a protective bubble around it. So I don't know if I can get through that bubble or if there's going to be like sirens going off as soon as I like cross the threshold for that. But I haven't gotten any pals yet that I can actually get to it yet because it's on the sea. And since you have a stamina meter, like if you can only swim like a couple of yards and then you're gonna die and drown. So, but and then there's there's always been kind of like, there's different areas like the mountain area was kind of cold, lava area that's kind of, obviously it's hot there, but the one lava area now you can actually see like kind of lava coming down like the mountain from even a far distance, which is kind of cool. Just kind of little graphical things that you didn't really, or at least I didn't notice before. I don't think it was there. But yeah, so just started over with that and just kind of kind of getting back in the swing of things. I played a little bit a few months ago, like maybe like 2 months ago. One of the Discord servers has like a monthly, or like I shouldn't say monthly, like quarterly game they kind of throw out there, and they had put Palworld, and I started to play it, but then I kind of jumped off because just other games popped up, and I didn't get to play as much as I could. But it was kind of a nice refresher back then, and kind of to see now what the 1.0 is like. So, and I think it was like, well, I played it a little bit on the PC. Mostly I've been playing on Steam Deck. So on the Steam Deck, I think it was like 22, between like 22, 25 gigs. So it was fairly hefty patch or update, I should say, not a patch. But they, like looking at the release notes, and it's like just huge, like pages and pages of stuff, because obviously they've had a lot of quality of life stuff. So, but yeah, so I'm enjoying that so far, and going to continue playing that just to see. I think they've added, I think almost like 70 new pals, which brings it up to like, I think they said like 287 pals altogether that you can get in the game now. So it's a pretty big number, and it's kind of nice that they've added so many more pals, and not just like 5 or 10 or 20 or something else. It's a pretty significant amount that they've added. So it's going to be nice to see all those pals the new ones they've done. So. Yeah, having a good time with that, and just gonna kind of keep going in that, playing on my Steam Deck probably most of the time. It's kind of nice just to I'm just playing locally, so I can just jump in there and I can just turn it off whenever I want, and I'm not gonna like lose progress or be worried about about all my pals or my base being destroyed or something. If I was on one of the official servers or something like that. So just kind of playing at my pace, but having a good time with that. Don't see any other comments. Brap does say solitaire is the goat. Yes, is the goat. Honestly, I go back to that game every once in a while, even on my phone. Like I've downloaded it, but kind of funny though. Significant releases for this coming week. There really wasn't anything like super big. The only one I will shout out, and I didn't see it on here, is Moss: The Forgotten Relic, coming out on July 16th. And that was actually a VR game originally that came out on the Quest. I think it's on PC VR too. But it was basically just like a platformer, and it's a third person view. So you're kind of like, like the god kind of controlling stuff within the environment, I believe. I don't think you actually even controlled the actual character. It's like a little mouse that you play as. But now it's coming out for at least PC. I don't know if it's coming out for consoles yet or if it's going to. So flat screen as they say in the VR world. So that'll be coming out this week. So that's supposed to be really good game. So I never played it because it was kind of that third person kind of god mode. Like I actually want to play some. I always wanted to play some first person. Kind of felt that actual VR kind of feel. So but yeah, that's other than that. I tried looking around. Yeah, I didn't really see anything major that was coming out. A lot of indie stuff. So we'll have to see in the coming weeks what's going to be coming out. So that is it for episode number 441. Game Logic, anything else you want to talk about or mention before we head out?
No, nothing else to add.
All right. Thanks everybody who joined us in the comments. Brap, Henry Hack, Here Down Under, Wara. I think Nate was jumped in there for a second or so. Thanks for joining us. Thank you, Game Logic, for having me back on. It's been a while. It was good to be back. I had kind of missed the show, actually. It's been so long. Next week, DBQ Hams. So you going to say something?
I was going to say, you picked some good weeks to miss.
Yeah. I saw those shows and like the length of them. I was like, wow, if I was on there, it would have been like 2 hours, like easy. Everything that was going on.
They were not pleasant topics either. So
no,
if you were going to miss a part of the news cycle, not a bad one to miss.
Well, I'm sure there'll be plenty more in the coming weeks and months. Hopefully not, but you never know. Next week, DBQ Hams will be primary host with myself and Game Logic as co-hosts. So please join us. Should be at a normal day on Sundays at 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 Central. Once again, thanks to everybody who joined us. Game Logic, thank you for joining me. We will see you next week. Have a good week. Play those games. Take care.